Thanks very much, Mary. And coming on from that, and in terms of where the MMC quantity surveyors came from, no, it did come before Mark Farmer came up with the term MMC. It was purely coincidental. So as one I'm willing to go along with. So what I want to talk today is about the economics of modular construction, modular being Cat A, or say category 1 volumetric. My background in this is I started MMC Concentrate in 2010. Before that, I was working with Fleming Group and helping to get visual modular structures of what get that up and running. And so we did that was a very innovative company that we learned a lot from, and continued working with Fleming Group then throughout the early days of MMC. And in the UK then as well, I started a company in offsite specialists. It's a collaboration of offsite specialists called the Offsite Group, with specialization in modular construction. So so what I want to focus on is the economics and cost of modular. Well, cost is a function of demand, supply, inputs, and efficiencies, and those efficiencies are related to planning and regulations and systems, as well as internal efficiencies. So there's internal efficiencies and external efficiencies. So in terms of the overview of the presentation, we'll look at the current state of the industry, how modular offsite can address this, why modular is not working, where it works best, and what a winning formula would look like. So the current state of the industry, we're pretty aware that there's numerous failures, and it comes from the industry's poor productivity. There's a lot of fragmentation in the industry because of the labour-intensive nature of it, and reliance on subcontractors. There's little R&D, and there's high levels of conflict and insolvencies. There's lack of well-defined briefs and propensity for clients to change their minds, and late in the process, siloed nature of the industry, where you've got design, procurement, and construction are separate activities. There's no combination there. There's an absence of standardization, and all this combines in that there's a lot of defects, rectification, additional costs, and conflict as a result. So there's also the effect that the issue that Tony and Jason brought up as well, in terms of manpower in the industry. You know, it's a very much an aging workforce. There's a difficulty in attracting new participants in the industry. I think 163,000 employed in the industry as of 2022. But we need an additional 107,000 to meet 2030 construction targets, and that's 51,000 alone needed for the housing and retrofit scheme. So there's massive pressure on human resources, and this is where modular offsite construction can come in to relieve this. So again, it's been improving with 120,000 employed in 2016. That's grown to 163,000, but there's 270,000 required in the next 6 years. So that's going to be a mountain that's going to be difficult to scale. So how can modular help this, right? I mean, if we look at here the graph from 1994 to 2011, say, Bolton being zero at 1994, has been 170% improvement in productivity in manufacturing, whereas construction productivity has declined. So the business model hasn't changed at all. So the question is, can manufacturing and efficiency be applied to those construction to construction? So the manufacturing in a big scale really kind of took off 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, with Henry Ford in his famous Model T. So he invented the assembly line in 1915. And before that, a car took 12 hours to build. Afterwards, it took 1.5 hours. It went from $850 in 1908 to $290 in 1925. That's a 65% reduction in costs. It was the first time in history where the job came to the worker and the materials. All along, and in from construction, the worker and the materials go to the job. And the increase in productivity as well boosted from 40,000 cars a year to 15 million. And all this is a result of standardization of parts and the supply chain. You fast forward 100 years, again, the same basic principle applies. There's still the assembly line, it's just the nature of delivery has changed. Now with AI enabled robotics, further efficiencies resulting in higher quality and lower costs. So the Leighton report was a seminal report produced 30 years ago. Michael Leighton in the UK, and this aims to modernize and transition the construction industry because there are severe problems there. And the closing statement is 30 years ago is quite revelatory. It says, like, you know, times come, and it says construction process cannot wait for another 30 years, and here we are 30 years later, and you know it's the same story. So so recommendation 24 and of the productivity of the report, they were targeting a 30% reduction in costs then, you know, and as you say, costs have increased rather than reduced, you know, because the basic principle of how we construct things haven't changed. So, but the Leighton report was really close. Okay, it identifies the correlation between car manufacturing and construction, you know. On the column on the left is satisfaction rating for modern car versus domestic, commercial and industrial construction, with the car being superior in all aspects in terms of quality and cost. So, and it gave the example in a McDonald's restaurant who had gone into modular construction to deliver their premises, and many of the foundation again, so they were they had hit a 60% reduction in construction costs by going modular. So they had come so close to identifying it, but not quite, in terms of how to get those efficiencies into the industry. So in terms of, okay, so why is modular and offsite, modular in particular, not working in the industry? So we look at a couple of examples, right? So there's been some very high profile failures in the modular industry, in particular in the UK. So Caledonian is one such example. So they had 20 million losses, 20 million pounds worth of losses in just 18 months. They had 4 years of straight losses. They had other issues then, like material supply cost, the legacy quality issues, and the cost of their product was extremely high. We were doing one project in Plymouth, and the cost, we're doing a modular example, and the cost of their solution was more than the entire budget for the development. So it would have been 150% over budget than modular route. And another example then is Leading General. This was the great hope of the industry. They had a 500,000 square foot factory up near Leeds, 450 employees, plans for 3,000 modular homes a year. And they had all the pieces. They had the 5.5 billion parent company was a financial giant in the pension service, so that they would build their own homes that they would invest in. And but they ended up closing last year with 172 million cumulative losses. So how did that happen? Well, this picture here is quite instructive. On the left is a picture of Caledonian's factory, and on the right is LG. So what we have here is on Caledonians, a low roof, there's no overhead cranes, there's no assembly line, and static production, materials and workers are coming to the job. So you have all the efficiencies of off-site construction and the inefficiencies of off-site construction, quite with the inefficiencies of on-site construction in one place. So, and on the right end is LNG, again, static production, materials and workers coming to the job. And again, no assembly line, and so a lot of inefficiency there. So the advantages of modular is like a controlled environment, efficient process, specialization in one type of building is an advantage. You can really get efficient at that, and you can use unskilled and semi-skilled labor where skilled labor is required on site because systemization and it's a lower threshold is required. Disadvantages then give high overhead costs. You have premises, rates, losing lighting. You need continuous orders because the gap in the schedule is a big drain on cash flow. And specialization in one type of building can also be a negative because it limits your market. So reasons of why modular fails. Projects not designed for modular. So taking a traditionally designed building and trying to modularize that isn't ideal. You've got a lot of inefficiencies and widths and that's designed for manufacturing and assembly. Designs too heavy or too wide. Awareness of what an efficient modular design entails. Lack of integrated mechanical and electrical information, lack of vertical alignment then because everything needs to stack. Program contingency is an issue. Just-in-time deliveries can be an issue because it can hold up production in the factory. So inefficient factory layouts and processes cause huge inefficiencies in terms of labor. Often poor accuracy of frames because, you know, especially when projects are stacking and an inaccuracy at the bottom can cause greater problems at the top. Not following QA processes, facility can be the wrong size, can be not suitable, and lack of storage areas. On site, then overwide modules kind of create logistics issues with widths of roads and bridges. With modular running very high foundation tolerances, that can be an issue on site. And coordination between factory and site programs. So where modular works best is where you have repetitive design. So the hotels, student accommodation, apartments, where you have a repeating module that you can use in many different scenarios. Over 6 stories in height, below that, panelized works well. Where you have restricted access or live environments where you need to keep people out, say like hospitals or constraints at the centre sites. Where time and speed of construction is a value, so you can shorten the program on site. Vertical integration is also important, so it is also, should I say, helpful. Once you have the contractor and the modular deliverer and modular delivery in one organization, or at least working very closely together as one package, that takes out any on-site construction issues. And very importantly is where projects are specifically designed for the system in mind, so you're not re-engineering something that's been that you've got planning for traditional design. So in terms of who's doing it right, Vision Modular Systems in the UK are a very good example of this. So they're specialists in very high rise. They've done some really innovative stuff in terms of doing the highest modular buildings in the world in London. They're vertically integrated, very efficient factory process, and unchallenged in their particular market space. So this guy is a colleague of mine in the UK, John Blythe. He was CEO of the Potter Group. So his formula is very much a winning one. So in terms of what he's done, he did 173 travel visits. That was one every 14 weeks, including at Cork and Dublin Airport. He built 6,000 houses and he did thousands of units for the area. And he did it all 25% below traditional prices, and it's profitable and it's higher quality than what was being done on site. So in terms of what were his rules, basically? Standardized dimension, standardized transport dimension. So here on the right is a 93 square meter and a 3-bed house comprised of 4 modules. So, but the same modules can be used for housing, for hotels, for student accommodation, for other accommodation. So the same modules can be used in multiple different scenarios. A common frame system, common dimensions, critically no factory cladding, because then that allowed for greater transportation widths, and was you could clad the building then in the vernacular of the area. No factory schedule gaps, so that he had always different types of, you had hotels, houses, and MOD going in all the time, so that there was always production in the factory. There's no gaps. Lean production principles, did everything out of cash flow, no debt, and controlled all on-site elements with a partnership with a civil contractor. So in terms to summarize then, I'd echo what Jason said in particular. Standardization is absolutely important, is absolutely critical. Standardization regulations, we have huge hurdles here in Ireland. So building regulations in particular, and certification. You know, in the UK, the certification is much more fluid, and there's a lot more options that can be done at lower cost. But there's good, you know, the government are making good strides towards listening to industry and coming up with a coherent plan as well. So I'm quite hopeful that there will be very practical and sensible changes in regulation policy in the near future. So thank you for that. That concludes my presentation.